Hey guys, it's Tacho here, back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and today we've got another tier list for you. This time we're going to be talking about all the 3-star and 4-star banner summons that you can get, and whether or not these units are going to be worthy plus 10 merge projects. So the best feather investment units pretty much. And we've got from the S tier to the D tier, all of these units. It starts getting a little bit gray the lower down the tiers we go, because some of these units, I mean, you could really make the arguments that they could either be moved up a tier or be moved down a tier, particularly in the B and the C tiers, where it really starts to become a gray area and it's hard to say whether or not certain players are going to value the same things that I do. So it is very much up for debate. But I do think that the S tier and the A tier are pretty much as good as they're going to get. I don't think there's too many changes to make up there. So let's just start things off with the S tier. And we have Ross, Valbar, and Echidna. All three of them are in the highest scoring bracket. So they score 174, which is better than you would get with a dual skill. And if you care about arena scoring, there's nothing else like these units in the 3-star and 4-star summoning pool. So these are definitely going to be the merge projects you want to go for if you care about arena scoring. And on top of all that, they are all pretty good units as well. Valbar's an armored unit, so he's got access to all the busted armor skills like Bold Fighter and Special Fighter. And Ross and Echidna are both really nice infantry axe units. They can player phase really well or enemy phase really well. They've got great stat distribution, so very solid picks. Then we've got Eliwood up next, and he's real lucky that he keeps on getting every single refine that Brave Roy gets. And with Blazing Durandal, he has access to Special Fighter and Steady Impact, which are two insanely good passive skills that normally you would not be able to get on a cavalry unit. So that's why he makes it up to the S tier. It's just a really great weapon, and he's got great stat distribution to make advantage of it. Having higher res than Brave Roy and gaining 10 defense when he initiates is really dirty, and honestly, I think he's kind of better than Brave Roy. That's going to be a little bit debatable, but I do feel like Eliwood makes better use of the weapon than Roy does, and it's also great that he's way easier to get to plus 10. Then we've got the classics, Tharja and Nino. Both of these units are Blade Tome units, and their refines only made them better. There's really not much else to say. If you care about player phase and clearing tough content like abyssal maps and all of those tough chain challenges, these two are easily going to be your best bets. Blade Tomes have held up so well since day one, and any unit with access to a Blade Tome and very nice attack and speed stats are going to be able to tear through all of the difficult opponents you have to face. Then we've got Lalena and Reinhardt, two really powerful player phase units. And even though they may not have Blade Tomes, they are very effective at attacking and pretty much getting one-shots on the foe. Lalena with her massive attack stat, and Reinhardt with his ability to double attack with magic, which is still pretty much unique to just him and Olwen and a couple of units on a very limited seasonal banner, where Reinhardt was one of the seasonal units as well. So, I mean, Brave Magic is just way too good, and there is a very good reason why Reinhardt has been a running meme in this game. Then we've got Noren, who is an amazing bait unit. She has a 168 BST, which is outrageously high for an infantry ranged unit. You give her the guard bow, you give her DD4, you can do a lot of craziness with Noren and allow her to just bait all the enemies. And it even helps that she's colorless, so she can't really get hit by type disadvantages. And for Soth and Kagero, they're both really great infantry daggers. Pretty much the best options we have outside of Kranya for free-to-play. Both of them have perf weapons that are really good. And both of them have sky-high attack stats and really good speed stats. So they find their way on a lot of infantry pulse setups in Aether raids. And they're just really good. So both of them are definitely great for plus 10 projects. And lastly, we've got Racing to wrap up the S tier. Having 3 range movement with flying mobility and being able to dance is just way too good support. He also heals at the start of every turn by 7 HP. So you can use him to really break certain old units like Celica for example, with Double Lion giving her 1 chip damage after every round of combat. Rayson can just heal that off for her and she can do it pretty much every single time. So Rayson is really great, one of the best support options and one of the best dancers in the game, regardless of only being a 4-star summon. So good stuff. And now we move on to the A tier, which is still pretty stacked, and a lot of these units are great plus 10 projects. We're going to start things off with the Dragon units, from Bantu all the way down to Naui. Dragons just got a massive buff with the release of Spring Idun. Her duo skill is going to negate effective against dragon and armor bonuses. So you will be able to go back to baiting in Aether raids with these dragon units if you've got Spring Idun supporting them. They of course are all infantry types, so you can hand them Null Sea Disrupt, and they will be able to counterattack even the foes that have Fire Sweep and Dazzling Staff effects. So all really great stuff. And they may even get a refine at some point. Like Fa and Naui definitely seem like they could be scheduled for a refine sometime in the future, which is going to be amazing on them, of course. Tiki's already got her refine, and it's a great one. And Bantu, he's a pretty recent unit compared to the other ones, so his BST is already naturally good. And then next up, we've got all of the flying units from Cordelia all the way up to Pala. So Cordelia is a resplendent hero now, so she gained plus 10 to her BST, which is great. And her stat allocation was already very nice, with tons of attack and speed and a really nice refine. I gotta be honest, I feel like Cordelia is probably the best free-to-play Lance Flyer that we have access to. Of course, Tsubasa is a little bit better than her, but that's a 5-star locked unit, so not a lot of people are going to be able to plus 10 Tsubasa, while Cordelia is easy to plus 10, and she's going to be putting in just as much work. Cherche is really good as well. She's got the Brave Axe effect with Panic, and her high HP and high defense and high attack all make that really good. Then for Katria, Est, and Pala, they all have pretty much the same refine where they have the triangle attack. If they are within 2 spaces of 2 flying allies, they can do an automatic double attack, and they also gain plus 3 to all stats. Of course, all 3 of them have different things to separate them. Like Pala's got a gem weapon, Est is effective against armors, and Katria has a -1 special cooldown. But it really doesn't matter, they're all really good, and being able to attack twice in a turn is great. It also can't be stopped by null follow-up. So instead of granting a follow-up attack, granting a second attack is just way better. So that's why these units are so great. And for Kada and Claire, they're pretty much the exact same unit. They have identical stats for the most part with minor differences, and the only thing that separates them is one's a sword unit and one is a lance unit. Both of them even have the exact same refines, so there's really not much else to say. Their refines are both amazing and they're really effective options, especially in arena play when they can have guidance to support your armored units and also have effective damage on armored units themselves. So the flying options up here are all really great. Then we've got Ares. This man looks pretty much like Alucard from Castlevania, and you guys already know how much I love Castlevania. So Ares is trying to pull off the Vantage and Special Spiral combo. He's a really nice bait unit, and honestly you could be making arguments to bump this guy up to the S tier, and I wouldn't really be complaining too much about that. He's really great when he works and when he gets going, but the problem is with all Vantage units he is weak to Hardy Bearing effects and also Fire Sweep and Dazzling Staff effects. So he's not the end-all, be-all bait unit that can just completely tear through every team, no problem. But if the enemies don't have those type of skills, then he's going to go to town and just shred everybody. So he deserves to be in the A tier. Then we've got the 2 Horse Tome units in Sicilia and Larachel. Larachel has a perf weapon while Sicilia doesn't, but in all honesty, you're just going to replace both of their weapons for a Blades Home and have them go to town. 3 range mobility with a Blades Home is just going to be so good. And because they're horse type units, they can easily get plus 6 to all stats with Fortify and Hone Cavalry. so they're always going to be effective. And that just goes to show how powerful the Blade Tomes have managed to remain all these years later. Then we've got Raven and Lonku. Both of these units have the exact same refine. It's -1 cooldown and then Life and Death 3. And they already had really nice attack and speed stats to start with. So having Life and Death on them, you give them Desperation, you give them Gale Force, and they can tear through multiple enemies in a turn, while taking a lot of damage as well from Life and Death, giving you access to Wings of Mercy shenanigans, which brings us up to the next set of units, the Dancing units. Tethys is a dagger unit, so she can equip all the busted dagger skills like Cloud Myogi and Sky Myogi and the Cleaner and so on. It's just really good being a dagger unit in this game when all the daggers are pretty much broken. They also all have dagger 7s, so that's like having defense and res smoke built in. It's just crazy how good daggers are in this game. And Sylvia and Olivia both have minor differences to set them apart from each other. Sylvia has better HP, so if you want to use her for Sudden Panic and Infantry Pulse, she's better at that. While Olivia's got nice defense, and she can be better at attacking foes and building up Gale Force, allowing her to get a KO and then go ahead and dance and let another unit get a second turn. So these Dancer units are a top priority for sure, very good options for +10. And our next unit is going to be Sophia. She is going to be getting a Resplendent variant in a couple of days, just like Cordelia. And Resplendent Sophia is going to be amazing at tanking. She's going to be effective against colorless foes, and she's going to have Bracing Stance. And coupled with all the stat bonuses she's going to get from +10 flowers and the Resplendent bonus, she's pretty much going to be the premier bait unit for colorless type advantage. And to wrap things up, we've got Effie. So Effie has a monstrous attack stat, and that's what sets her apart, I feel, from all of the other free-to-play armor options we've got. 40 base attack is still like one of the highest you can have in the game, even after so many years. And Effie having access to skills like Bold Fighter to really show off that attack stat even more is just way too good. She's also very decent on the enemy phase as well, with Vengeful Fighter or Special Fighter and the Barrett's Lance to fix her low res. Effie is just really good, and she's held up so well. And now we've come to the B tier where we start getting into a bit of a gray area here where it's really up to preference on which units you would place in B or C tier. Of course, this is my tier list, so not everyone is going to agree with that, and that's perfectly okay. Everyone is going to value certain attributes more than others. So really, this is just what I feel as far as using the units myself goes. And I'm sure if you guys were making a tier list, there would be different units in the B and C tier as well. So let's just get started here. Our first unit is Altena, and she's a pretty recent unit, but she's a great one at that. Her weapon has Lull Attack and Defense 5, which isn't even a passive skill you can get in the game yet. You're also not allowed to have Lull skills on flying units either. So it's really cool that she has that on her weapon, and she's got massive attack and defense stats. So she's a great bait unit if you're fighting melee type opponents specifically. But her res is really low, so you do have to be a little bit careful with her. Then we've got Mordecai, who is pretty much the best user of Smite in the entire game. When he smites your allies, all the foes within 2 spaces of him and the smited ally are going to take -4 to all stats. So being able to debuff the foes like that is really helpful, and it just turns him into a really good smite bot that is able to debuff foes and buff your allies too, since he has a link skill. And just like Altena, he's got massive attack and defense stats. So he is okay at fighting melee type opponents, but his res is pretty low, so you do have to be careful there. Then we've got Corrin, Marth, and Matilda. All 3 of these units are just buff bots for a better unit, and they're able to provide a lot of drive stat bonuses to your allies. This is really good, of course, because the main way most people bait in Aether raids is to set up one super tank unit and have them bait the entire enemy team. So having units that can really augment one super tank and make them that much better is always going to be useful in my eyes. So the reason why it's better to use drive buffs as opposed to hone or rally type buffs is because they can't get panicked and reversed on you. So if the foes have a panic type setup, it's not going to matter to these guys. They can just drive buff the ally and make that super tank that I was talking about way better and way harder to stop. So I do feel like these units are all deserving of being in the B tier. Then we've got Soren, who is another type of support unit, but a little bit different than the other three. The cool thing about Soren is that he can chill the opponents, and he's got chill on his weapon refine. You can have it in the B slot, and you can have it as a sacred seal. So he can chill up to 3 different stats. And in fact, we just started getting double chill skills now, so you can actually have Soren chill all 4 stats of the opponents. It's always going to be a gamble though when you enter combat with Soren. You're not sure who he's going to be able to chill when the fight starts. But once you get the enemy team down to 1 unit left, being able to chill all of their stats is just really wild, and I feel like Soren is a worthy unit thanks to all of that. Then we've got Gwendolyn and Sheena, 2 more free-to-play armored units. They of course have high BSTs, being armors, and with access to all the busted armor skills like Vengeful Fighter and Special Fighter, these 2 can tank like monsters. They've got insanely high defense and res stats, and really the only downsides to them is that they have very low base attack, unlike Effie, who is crazy on the player phase thanks to her 40 attack stat. So I do still have Effie above these 2, but they are really good. And the next 3 units we've got are Hawkeye, Arthur, and Libra. Hawkeye and Arthur of course have very awesome refines. Hawkeye's got lull attack and defense, while Arthur gets a potential +8 to all stats, which is just outrageous. Libra doesn't have a refine, but it doesn't matter because his BST is already pretty good, and he's got his stats exactly where he wants them to be, with high defense and res, making him a nice bait choice. So these 3 are pretty decent investments for +10 projects. And of course, being infantry types, you can equip them with all the good infantry skills like lulls and stuff. So they're all very good. Bowie's up next, and he is the only unit in the game with built-in close counter on his weapon. He's also got triangle advantage against colorless type foes, which is really nice. And thanks to his high defensive stat, he's going to be able to bait some of those pesky colorless archer units like Legendary Leaf and Legendary Alm. So Bowie's not half bad. And next up we've got Salif, who honestly you could make arguments to bump this guy up to the A tier. He only does one thing, which is survive any attack thanks to his built-in miracle effect. But he does that so well, and it's such a great thing to be able to do that I'm sure some people would value him that high to put him in the A tier. He's amazing on infantry pulse setups in Aether Raid's defense. And just having a unit on your defense team that's so hard to kill in 1 round is always going to be useful. It just sucks that he's not that great on the player phase, or honestly able to do much else outside of that. But like I said already, it is one thing that he can do that most other units can't. So he's still really good. Next up on the list, we've got Hana. And looking back now, I probably should have grouped her up with Soleil and Selena as well. But it's all good. So Hana's weapon has Swift Sparrow, and it's got effective against armor, which is really nice for the player phase, and the fact that she's got such good well-rounded stats, high attack and high speed, make her a really good sword option. Soleil doesn't have a refine, but she does have great stat distribution, a high BST, and unlike Hana, who is pretty much stuck with her refine, Soleil is able to use pretty much any of the other options that she wants, like Slaying Edge, or Armor Smasher, or Fire Sweep Sword. She isn't as reliant on her refine as Hana is to be good, so that's always nice. And Selena may not have the best attack stat, but she does have a great weapon refine, and it's effective against armors, and it grants a bunch of stats to her if the foes have more attack, which they probably will. But because she does that effective damage, it doesn't matter if she has low attack. She is still able to hurt the enemies, and her defense and res are both really good as well, so she's nice on the enemy phase. And then we come to the cavalry units from Abel all the way down to Ferdinand. They're all pretty good, and they all have unique things about them. So Cain and Abel, they're able to get double attacks, and they gain attack and defense based on the amount of allies you have within 2 spaces. So again, like we said in the A tier with Est, Katria, and Pala, being able to launch a double attack as opposed to a guaranteed follow-up attack is always going to be way better. And it gives them the potential to do quad attacks if they have enough speed. And it also allows them to attack twice, even against foes that have null follow-up. So it's very helpful stuff. For Stahl and Sully, they get the double attack, and they also have gem weapons. So if Stahl is fighting a green type opponent, or if Sully is fighting a red type opponent, they're both going to be awesome in those instances, and I feel like gem weapons get a little bit more hate than they deserve. Gem weapons are really good still, and as long as you know for a fact you're going to be fighting the foes that you have color advantage against, it's really hard to argue with gem weapons in those cases. So definitely don't sleep on gem weapons. And for Seth and Titania, they both have access to tactic skills, which are still my favorite buff skills in the entire game. Being able to work from 2 spaces and having such an easy requirement make the tactic skills really great. And being able to get off 3 tactic skills at once is awesome. Just like Sully and Stahl, they also have gem weapons. So if you need them to fight specific opponents, they're going to be really good in those cases. Roderick's got Darting Blow on his weapon along with the Fire Sweep effect, so he's going to be able to double attack the foes pretty easily and also negate their follow-up attacks. So he's really good. And Perry's weapon gives her the Slaying effect and +4 to all stats. So with her already pretty good stat distribution, that's a nice weapon for her. And Ferdinand von Ayer, he may not have any refines like all these other units, but he is a pretty recent unit, and his BST is really high, with very good stat distribution. So he's free to equip any lance that he wants, like Slaying Lance, or Slaying Spear, or Berkut's Lance, and so on and so forth, and he's going to be really good. That is the advantage that he has from having such a nice BST in comparison to all these other units, is that he's not really stuck with a refine to be good. He's free to use whatever he wants, and units like that are always going to have an edge. Then we've got Lazlo, May, and Robin. So all 3 of these units are buff bots, just like Matilda, Corrin, and Marth were, except they don't provide drive buffs, they provide actual hard buffs like rally and hone skills. So Lazlo went from 0 to hero after he got his refine. He can give +4 to all stats to pretty much your entire team if a movement-based assist skill is used on him or he uses it on an ally. And he also gains a double attack when he initiates combat if he's got 2 allies in 2 spaces that have at least +10 to their stats. So with his refine, that's not too hard for him to activate. And again, double attacks are always going to be way better than a guaranteed follow-up attack. May is just really good because she can give +6 to all stats with link skills, and she's also got decent attack and speed stats to fight the opponents herself. And Robin can provide +4 to all stats with a tactic style buff, while also being effective against colorless type units. So all 3 of these units I value pretty well, and they're all really nice units to go for. There's also Odin, who's in the same boat as May, where he provides +6 to all stats with link skills. But the kicker with him is that he does have a Blade Tome effect. So even though his attack is abysmally low, it's not the biggest deal in the world to him, because he can just deal a ton of damage anyway thanks to the Blade Tome. So Odin's pretty good too. And next up, we've got all the infantry bow units from Virion all the way up to Klein. Virion got lucky with his refine, and it gave him the Aversa effect. So he's able to panic all the foes that are adjacent if he has more HP. And his HP is really good for an infantry unit, so he's able to get that off pretty often. And he also gains +4 to all stats from his weapon. So his refine did turn him into a pretty good option. Tanya doesn't have a refine, but she does have really nice base stats. It just sucks that Noren came out and she just completely overshadowed Tanya. Rebecca's refine gives her +4 to all stats also if she has a hone or rally buff active on her. So Rebecca's not bad either, but she is stuck with her refine unfortunately. Even though it's a good refine, it means she can't use something else like, for example, guard bow or something like that. So she is limited in options. And the same can be said about Gordon and Klein. They do have really nice refines, but they are stuck with them, so if you want them to be good, you can't really customize them that much. Roy is really nice too. He makes the B tier. He's effective against dragon types, and he has built-in quick riposte, as well as bracing stance. So Roy's enemy phase is really nice, and it gives him pretty much all the tools he needs to be a decent unit. And next up, we've got 3 more Infantry Daggers in Chad, Legault, and Kaze. Sadly, they're not quite as good as Soth or Kagero, because they have low attack, but they all have really good speed, and low attack isn't the biggest deal for dagger units, because they are free to equip all the broken daggers, like Broadleaf Fan and the Cleaner and so on. So it's not the biggest deal to them. Chad's BST is higher than the other two, but he only gets +5 Dragon Flowers, whereas Legault and Kaze can get +10. So they are able to keep pace with Chad a little bit. Then next up, we've got a bunch of ranged horses, starting with the bows from Wrath and Python. They're both pretty much the exact same unit. There's really not that much different about them. Both of them are green archers, which does suck a little bit. I wish they had different colors, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. They have pretty much the same attack and speed stats, whereas Wrath has more res and Python's got more defense. So feel free to equip them with whatever weapon you want, like for example Brave Bow or Fire Sweep Bow, and they're going to be pretty good. And for the Cleric options, they all have minor differences. Mainly they're all focused on speed and res, and they have low attack. But low attack isn't the biggest deal for Clerics, because the staff weapons are basically just as busted as the daggers. All of them can have dazzling staff effects if you refine them, and stuff like Pain and Panic that can really hurt the opponents are the main reasons to use these types of units. And to wrap us up, we've got Brady and Mercedes. 2 more staff units, but they're also very recent and they have very good BSTs. So I would say they are the premier options for +10 if you're trying to go for an infantry staff. So that's going to cover us for the B tier. And I'm not going to go too in-depth with the C and the D tier. I feel like you could make arguments for some of these units to jump up. It's just really based on preference, like I said earlier, and the way that I'm rating these units is based on my own play style and also certain aspects that I value highly. But maybe your values in units are going to be different from mine, and you would personally prefer to have some of these units moved up or moved down. It really all just comes down to preference. So I'm not going to go too in depth with these units, but real quick I'm just going to say why they're in the C tier. So Draug, he's got no res, and he has to compete with the Black Knight and Zephyl, who I feel like are just better options. Athena is in the C tier because she's just not quite as good as Hana or Soleil is. Same thing with Ogma, he's really not as good as those two. Erica could be awesome if you have her supported with Caden, and you're able to get +6 to all stats on both of them. But it's really tough to set up Erica, and you have to do a lot of gymnastics to make her a really good unit. So in the long run, I don't think it's too worth it. Hinata is really just an enemy phase bait unit, but he's not quite as good as Roy, because Roy has res and also effective against dragons. Barst has the Wrath effect on his weapon, but he has no res, and you gotta run around a lot to build up your Wrath special cooldown and be able to jump the foes with a special attack. Berica and Camilla are actually pretty good for enemy phase units, and they're not bad options for distant counter. Berica has very low res though, and Camilla already got her refine, and it's not the craziest refine in the world, it's just alright. And Oscar's in a similar boat to Camilla. Both of their refines just grant them attack and speed, and also can provide drive buffs for attack and speed to your allies. But when we're talking about drive buffs, the units you want to go for are definitely going to be Marth and Corrin and Matilda. So I do feel like those two are a little overshadowed by the ones we have in B tier. Corrin's another infantry dragon, and you could make some arguments to bump her up to the B tier. I could honestly see it. She's really not that bad of a unit, but her res is trash, her attack isn't really the best, and she is in dire need of a refine, more so than any of the other dragon type units. And also, unfortunately, she did not get the raised BST that the other dragons have, so that's why she's in the C tier. Donald has held up pretty well, actually, statistically, but he is in dire need of a refine, and until he gets one, he's going to be in the C tier. Florina's refine is just alright. She's effective against armor, and she gets close defense. And her stats are pretty good all around, but she has low attack, so I don't think she's that spectacular. Henry is effective against colorless, and he's got a really nice refine, but honestly, he's just overshadowed by Sophia, who's about to get a resplendent buff. And Merrick is not too bad either. He's got really high defense for a mage, but Bowie's got a better refine for taking advantage of the high defense. And Merrick's other refines are trying to be offensive, while Merrick himself does not have the offensive stats to pull that off too well. Lucas is just another bait unit, but for that you may as well just bait with Mordecai and also gain the ability to smite like a god, so I'd give the edge to him over Lucas. Obero's effective against armor, and she's another bait unit, but again, I would give the edge to Mordecai in that regard, because he does a little bit more than that. Tsubaki is actually a really nice bait unit, and he gains +7 true damage with his weapon, but his attack stat really just isn't there yet, and compared to a unit like Altena, who's just going to be overall better, I feel like Tsubaki's in the C tier. Joggin got his refine, and it's sabotage attack, so he is able to capitalize on his res, which is his only claim to fame, but compared to Soren, who has the chill skills, they're just a little bit better overall, and Soren can also fight pretty well since he is a mage and he's got the Owl Tome effect on his weapon. Morgan is pretty much just a player phase red mage, and there's really just no way that he competes with units like Lalena or Tharja, so he's all the way down in the C tier. Thea doesn't have a refine yet, so we have to hold off for that, but a nice refine on her could bump her up to the B tier. Tailtew, I have this unit built up, and she's one of the rare cases where you can have Wrath on a Tome unit, but I find myself using May a lot more, just because May can provide the ally buffs, and to me that's just way more useful. Silas is a horse bait unit, but he's not as good as Ferdinand, so I give the edge to Ferdinand. Shigure and Shanna are both 2 more lance flyers, but I feel like they're both overshadowed a ton by a unit like Cordelia, so they're all the way down in C. Then we've got Niles. Niles has an awesome refine, and he is another one of those units that I feel you could make arguments for to bump him up into the B tier. But his stat distribution is a little bit awkward, so I have him in the C tier. Felicia's in a similar boat. She does have a really good refine, but her stats are very awkward, and she only gains the special charge +1 if she's fighting a mage, which sucks. If she got that against any enemy, it would have been way better. Jacob's refine is pretty nice as well, but the problem with him is that he's pretty much stuck to that one weapon, and he's not able to use any of the other busted daggers like Broadleaf Fan and stuff, as well as a unit like, say, Chad or Soth or Kagero. So he's all the way down there, and the same can be said about Saizo and Matthew. They've all got pretty decent refines, but they are stuck with their refines if they want to be okay. Whereas all the other dagger units higher up on the tiers are able to use some of the other daggers instead. And finally, we come to all the infantry staff units, and they're all pretty minor in terms of differences between each other. Most of them are either focusing on speed and res, or focusing on their defenses, and that's not bad by any means. Staff units are always going to be decent, because staffs are just busted, but statistically they are overshadowed by Brady and Mercedes, and they don't have the 3-space movement like the horse staffs do, so they are all the way down in the C tier. And finally, the D tier. I'm not really going to talk about these units. Most of them have refines, and that's just not good enough to save them. Or they don't have a refine yet at all in some cases, like with Leon, for example. And to be honest, I'm sure a lot of people are probably going to say Leon should be bumped up to the C tier, but he just has absolutely no res. He does have defense, which is okay, but not having res on a unit that wants to be a bait unit isn't really that great, and he has no refine yet, so there's really not much he can do. And that's going to wrap it up for our 3-star and 4-star plus 10 merge project tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I know for a fact I'm about to get blasted in the comments now with all the differing opinions on where these units should be tiered. But I welcome it, and I'm looking forward to reading your opinions. So go ahead and leave some nice comments there for me to see. And as always, guys, this is your boy Tacho signing out. And I will catch you guys again in the next one.